Selling your car is a difficult task and it is plagued with lots of different problems, and it can be stressful, and for a lot of people it can be quite daunting as well. So the purpose of today's video is what we're going to do is we're going to look at all the different ways you can sell your car and see which way might be best for you and what's going to get you the best money for your car essentially. So sit back, relax, grab a coffee or a tea or whatever you might be drinking, and I'm going to run through all the different ways that I know of as a car dealer that you might be able to sell your car from, and hopefully give you a little bit of a steer on this one. This one's going to be educational, but hopefully interesting too. So the modern world has changed, and the way in which you sell your car is not the same anymore. So it used to be a case of you stick it up in your local pub car park with 2995 or whatever in the window and your phone number, and people will give you a ring. But the internet has indeed dawned, and that is where everything is at the moment. And when you look at selling your car online, you are given so many different options and different ways to sell them. There's some obvious, some less obvious, and some that you might not have heard of before. And the purpose of today is to run through all of those different options with you and think which might be the best route. And this will be determined by the car that you're selling, in my opinion. I think that makes a huge difference. So first of all, platforms are the obvious place to sell your car from. So you've got some obvious ones. I've written them down here to remind myself. Autotrader, eBay, Gumtree, you've got Facebook Marketplace, you've got Piston Heads, Car and Classic, there'll be loads of other ones. These are all obvious places where you pay a fee, not with Facebook or Gumtree, you pay a fee and you are put onto an open market with your car. They give you a vague idea as to how much you should be selling it for, and it is then for the public to get back in touch with you. Now, some of these platforms I think are great, some of them I think are extortionately expensive, and some of them I don't think work very well at all. So let's just run through each individual one. And the first one that I don't want to start off with, but I'm going to do, is the obvious one, and that's Autotrader. Autotrader is an expensive way of selling your car. However, it does work. The problem I've got with Autotrader is the cost. So it could cost you a small fortune to have your car listed in what's called a unlimited amount of time advert. That's not what it's called, but you know what I mean. So you can have it on for as long as you possibly want it on for. Now, the problem with Autotrader is they will give you a vague price as to what they think your car is worth for you to sell. It's often inflated slightly to try and encourage you to sell your car on their platform, and then you can pay extra to have it on as long as possible. And the problem that I've got with Autotrader is that the longer they have a car on for, the more they get paid, which is a massive conflict. But this is the same for most of these companies. The longer they've got your car there for, the more you are spending on advertising of that car. Now, with Autotrader, the problem that I've got with them is that it can cost you sometimes up to 100 quid to have an unlimited advert on. You can bull your price up and therefore alienate your market, and it is a really, really busy place to sell your car in. So you've got to stand out if you're going to put it on Autotrader. But it is a go-to for a lot of people. It tends to be the first place that they look for a car. So there's an argument that Autotrader is probably one of the places to look if you're selling your car. However, you've then got eBay, which is a lot cheaper. It's still got a lot of eyes on your cars, and it is quite a good platform to sell from. You're limited to how many photographs you can put on there, but it is a cheaper way of selling your car. Now, the benefit I think to eBay over Autotrader is psychologically, I think that people still think they're getting a better deal because it's on eBay rather than Autotrader, if that makes sense. Also, it's a lot more difficult to kind of compare apples with apples. So Autotrader have got this great way of being able to select different cars and compare them all together. Now, it sounds great, but what you're not doing is looking at each car individually and has it got a scuff on the bumper, are the wheels curved, has it got good service history, etc. But it gives you a sort of a good way of looking like for like, are these cars any good? eBay removes that privilege for a buyer, which actually for a seller gives you a bit of an advantage. So there's an argument, if you're looking at those two platforms together, eBay might be a better route. However, a lot of it is driven on the car that you're selling. The more spec that you've got, the more it's going to stand out regardless of the platform. Other platforms to look at are Gumtree and Facebook. They're free, so you can advertise your car for nout on those. However, unfortunately, with free advertising comes the sort of interest that you'd expect. Is this still available? Is a message that gets sent constantly on Facebook Marketplace. Now, if you're prepared to deal with that sort of buyer, or when I say buyer, when you're prepared to deal with those sorts of leads that aren't necessarily leads, it's just people clicking on an evening because they're bored and drunk or whatever, or they're falling out with the missus and they want to look at new cars and a new life in the sun, then maybe that's a route for you. I've sold cars on Facebook Marketplace, it does work, but I tend to find that it works for sort of the cheaper end of the market. Under 10 grand definitely, under 5 grand probably most suitable for Facebook Marketplace. Same Gumtree, they're, in my opinion, very, very similar sites. The final one that you've got, the final couple that you've got are Piston Heads and Car and Classic. Now, what I suggest that you're selling on that sort of a platform is probably something that is a little bit more niche, very high spec, might be fewer examples around, maybe more collectible. They're an enthusiast buying site. So if you're properly into cars and you're a bit of a geek with it like I am, you might look at Piston Heads and you might look at Car and Classic rather than looking at the obvious ones like Autotrader and eBay. So that is pretty much all of your car buying platforms in a nutshell. Autotrader, expensive, mass market, easy for the public to compare. eBay, cheap, might look better value on there and is less difficult to compare with other cars, which can work for you as a seller. Then you've got Facebook and Gumtree, cheaper cars better, deal with a lot of messers. There are scams on there to be careful of as well, especially Facebook, but that is a cheap route to market. And then more specialist stuff, you're looking at Piston Heads and you're looking at Car and Classic. That for me is the automotive sales platforms in a nutshell. However, there are other ways of selling your car and it doesn't have to be through these obvious platforms. So the next thing that you'll find when you go online and you Google sell my car will be car buying sites. Now, I've done a video of these in the past. I'm going to do one in more detail in the future. But essentially what you've got is Motorway, We Buy Any Car and CarWow. Motorway and CarWow are very similar buying sites, and if you don't know, essentially what happens is they will give you a vague price or an indicative price or an estimated price as to what your car's going to reach in auction. Now, essentially as a dealer, I can go onto Motorway and I can look at cars for sale and I can bid against other dealers to buy that car. Now, there is a little bit of auction fever and bidding frenzy that might get you more money on those because dealers are trying to compete to get in front of the car. So there is an argument that with those, you're probably not going to get as much as you would on a private sale, but you are going to end up with an easier sale and with someone coming to collect the car with no questions asked. The problem with it is that when dealers come across and look at your car, if there's something that you've not been very honest about, they will spot it and they will negotiate and try and get the money back off the car. I know this happens because I've done it. I've gone to see cars. I remember we went to go and buy one in Portsmouth. It was a Lotus Elise. Beautiful car, meant to be absolutely split mint, had done 2,500 miles. And we got down there and the bonnet was quite heavily stone chipped, more than you'd expect, even on a low car, 2,500 miles. We tried to do a deal with the customer because it was meant to be split mint and we didn't have to paint the front end of it. He would not move on price at all. So we drove away. We didn't buy the car. But just because it sells on Motorway or CarWow doesn't mean it's sold, if that makes sense. So there's a bit of a risk there. And then you've got ye old faithful We Buy Any Car. We Buy Any Car will give you an offer on your car. You then take your car in, and at which point they'll then assess the car to make sure it still qualifies for the offer that they're giving online. It very rarely does. I've yet to experience someone who's sold a car to We Buy Any Car and got the money they expected. The people who work there work on something called negative commission. What that essentially means is the more money that they knock off the car, the more money that they earn. That is how We Buy Any Car works. So they'll get you on a quote of £10,000 and by the time you're done you'll be £8,000 and you won't realise what's just hit you. However, if you've got a problem with your car and you're trying to mask it or hide it, there is an argument the best way to offload it, if you want to be dishonest, is to stick it through We Buy Any Car. Because essentially what will happen then is it will get sold onto a dealer through an auction and the dealer will end up with all of your problems. I know this because I've bought them and I've ended up with the problems. So that's kind of a get out. When you're trying to get the most return on your car, the platforms selling privately are going to be the best way of doing it. There is an argument you pay more to get the most coverage on Autotrader, but then there's other ones to look at on those platforms as well. If you want a quick, easy sale where a dealer will come across and buy it and hopefully not bend your arm when he gets there, those are your car buying platforms. They're a good route to sell it. However, there are other routes to market as well. And I've tried these, I've bought from these, and they do seem to work. And they are often free. Selling your car on the side of the road. used to be the way to sell your car. Then it kind of went through a period where if you saw a car on the side of the road, you thought, why, that's a car on the side of the road. But now we're getting into a world where everything is so much more competitive. There is an argument that sticking your car on a busy junction with a price board in the window turns heads. I know this because we did a video recently about this trading up. You know, we're trying to trade from 3 grand up to 10 grand. It's ongoing in the background. And I bought a Ford Fiesta on the side of the road. Now, he ended up getting a better deal than he got from his trade-in by selling it to me. And I ended up with buying a car that I could touch, feel, smell, and get a proper all-around view on, rather than buying it on online auction or whatever it might be. So it worked for me, worked for him, and was actually a good way of selling a car. So getting your car looking good and sticking it on the side of the road ain't a bad thing, really. Your other options, which I'm trying at the moment, is you could raffle your car. Okay, so if you don't know what car raffles are, essentially what they are is you'll sell tickets for £1 or £2. You hope to get to the point where you make more money than the car is worth, and then somebody wins the car for £1 or £2. Now, we're doing one at the moment on an Audi TT, and it's kind of gone okay. We've only got a week left. It ends on Friday or Saturday morning, the 25th. Now, the problem with this is I don't think I've promoted it heavily enough, and you do question whether or not it would have made more sense to just sell this car through the traditional way. I'm going to show you what we're doing so far. So the total revenue on this raffle is £4,142. The price of the car was 3 grand. So when we do the maths on this, 4142 times 0.9, and the reason that I've done that is because the raffle company take 10% of the proceeds, means that we've so far made £727 on that raffle, which sounds good. But if I was to have sold that car through a traditional method, then it would have sold for £5,000 and I'd have made 2 grand. So that's not adding up. The other problem that I've got as well is I did say that I was going to do a charity donation out of the proceeds, which I will do. But the question is, how much to make it meaningful? And was it worth it in the long run? You know, we have actually picked a charity for that as well. So we're going for Andy's Man's Club, which is essentially to do with mental health. It's a way for blokes to sit down, talk, and get stuff off the chest that they maybe can't get off the chest at home. Now, it was set up a number of years ago by the brother of a chap who sadly committed suicide, and he wanted to create somewhere where blokes could go and talk and say things they might not want to say at home and sort of get stuff off the chest and just sort of be surrounded by other blokes that are also having a bit of a tough time. You can still get tickets for it, by the way. There are a few days left to run. There is going to be a free code there, which is free TT. If you want a ticket for note, you can have one for note, and there's going to be a link for the raffle in the description below. So raffling a car is another way of doing it. However, as you can see from those numbers, probably not the best way of doing it, but we live and we learn. Now, the other way to sell a car, and I think genuinely this is where you're going to get your best money for a car, if you are not wanting to sell it privately, so you don't want to deal with the tyre kickers, you don't want to deal with potentially being scammed or someone stealing it off your drive or whatever, is selling it to a local dealership. Now, people get afraid of car dealers because they think that you're just trying to get your leg lifted and they want to rip you off and they pay the least amount possible for the car. And most of that is true. The back end of it is true. You want to give as little as possible, but at the same time, you can still get a good price for your car. Now, I think the best car to sell to a dealer is always going to be something that's got good service history, good spec, good condition, etc. But spec, I think, is really important. So when you're selling a car privately or through one of these buying sites or whatever, it often doesn't factor spec in. So if you've got a car that has got a pan roof, an upgraded sound system, it's got massage seats, it's got sat nav, all the different things that you'd want out of a car, that is spec. The more of it, the better, and the more a dealer is going to be interested in that. So if you've got a high spec car, I'd always suggest that you try your local dealer. Now, the best way to get the most amount of money out of a local dealer isn't to just send them an email saying this is a car for sale. Get on the phone and ring them. And I know it's awkward, but we're people too, and we buy from people. And when someone's got a nice story about a car and they've got a genuine reason for selling it and they're approaching you, you're immediately thinking, I'm interested in this. And when you take it down to the dealer for them to have a look, be honest. If you point something out that a dealer might have missed, they are thinking, this person has got integrity and they're probably going to tell us about other bits that we might have missed as well. So being honest, bringing a clean car to a dealer as well, because if a car's dirty when it comes in here, for example, when we're buying a car, I immediately knock 500 quid off because I'm thinking, what if there's a scratch I can't see? Your car's filthy, mate. I genuinely think that is where you're going to get your most amount of money from if you don't want to sell it on a platform and deal with the public. So to kind of summarise on this one really, to get the most money out of your car, The best way to do it, in my opinion, is to sell through a buying platform. If it's specialist, you want to go car and classic or piston heads. If it is Billy Basic and you want to get most eyes on and it's a cheap car, you want to go Facebook or you want to go Gumtree. If it is a nice car that you think is going to be appropriate for the biggest audience possible and you're not bothered about selling it tomorrow, you want to take a bit of time, it doesn't really matter. Autotrader, potentially eBay. There you go, two's there. If you just don't want to deal with the public, and I can't blame you for it, then the best route is going to be a buying site. I think We Buy Any Car is the worst one to go for. Motorway is probably not a bad shout if your car's got some decent spec, and then there's CarWow in there as well. The final routes that I think are applicable, because I don't think raffling your car is a good idea, as you can see from my stats, but the final route that I think is a good way of doing it is genuinely approaching a local dealer, someone that's got a good reputation in the area. Be prepared, they're probably going to want 2, 3, 4, 5 grand across your car, depending on the value or depending what that car is. But being open and honest and showing them a car physically, people buy from people. And I still like getting sold to. It's the way to do it. Anyway, I hope that has helped you, and I hope that you get as much money as you possibly can for your car. It is difficult selling cars. Some cars sell really quickly. Some cars take ages to sell. In this place, sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's quiet. There's no rhyme or reason for it. Good photos, clear listing, be honest, get it online, and a bit of patience, and you'll get the money for your car. Hope that helps. That was informative, wasn't it? Anyway, back to the usual drosh in the next video, I'm sure. See you on the next one. Cheers.